This is Gina Bell. I'm a storyteller. This is Jars of Arioch, Birds of a Feather. It was beginning to get dark as we drove down Boogertown Road. It's a small road just big enough for 2 cars to pass. Little houses and mobile homes with junk in the yard sat off the road. We got to a mailbox with a wooden crow sitting atop it. There was a long gravel road that crunched loudly as we drove back into the canyon. There was an incredibly old double-wide trailer with a small staircase and a wooden perch with an old torn chair. A rusty car sat off to the side with no wheels on it. Grass had grown up and around it. Chickens scattered as we pulled up. Pit bulls barked and yelped. She had at least 6 of them, and they all looked like Blue. Black cats scattered, and I could see all sorts of crow figures and items everywhere. Wind chimes and little statues all in the shape of crows. Trees surrounded the little house and dream catchers adorned them. I could see the curtains moving as those inside looked out to see who was coming. Kai sighed and told me to stay in the car. She patted each dog as they came to greet her. These dogs knew her. She got out and walked up to the front door. Blue stayed in the car with me and whined as her owner went without her. The door opened and the tattered screen creaked as Kai opened it. I saw her talking to someone and she pointed back to me. Kai walked back to my side of the car and I rolled down the window. She said she's been waiting for you. You're gonna think we are all crazy after this. Just remember, it's all bullshit. I told Jake I would bring you here, but if you want to leave, we can. No, I want to meet her. I'll take any help that I can find. Well, all right then, but we are bringing Blue. She has like 6 or 7 daughters, and they all have kids and baby daddies. It's pretty crowded in there. Just stay close to me. Don't tell her anything unless she asks. You understand? I nodded my head and got out of the car, and Blue got out after me. I followed her into the house. The place stunk of mold, cigarettes, and weed. A little girl in a dirty diaper walked up and hugged Blue. Her heavy diaper hung off her tiny butt. There were a bunch of kids and young adults all huddled around a TV. They were playing video games and smoking weed. None of them looked at us as we made our way through a tiny hallway. We passed a bedroom with an old woman in a wheelchair. She was missing both her legs from the knee down. By the width of the chair, I was quite sure she couldn't get out of the room if she wanted to. She looked like she was chewing something. She was very heavy, and she had a cup in her hand. As we walked by, she looked up at me with one eye open and spit into her cup. A dark liquid dripped off her lip, and she wiped it with her sleeve. There was a closed room at the end of the hall. Kai knocked softly, and I heard a voice tell her to come in. There was a woman sitting at a wooden table with tarot cards in front of her. She was holding a lit cigarette and shuffling the cards around. She had black and gray hair that had not been brushed in a long time. Her nails were long and yellow. "Come in." She waved at me, and I sat down in the chair across from her. She was missing teeth, and I could smell her breath. It smelled like cheap whiskey and decay. She had a lit candle on the table next to her. It flickered slightly as we entered the room. "Been waiting on you, girlie," the crow said while pointing a bony, crooked finger at me. Ashes from the tip of her cigarette fell onto the cards below. I didn't say anything. "2 teas." Excuse me?" I asked while looking back to make sure Kai was still there. "2 teas in the names of the one you seek. You're half of a whole now. You'll never be whole again. The one you seek is not on this plane anymore. He was bad and he was dealt with. Now you have another following you.
He isn't sure about you yet. He's watching your soul. He thinks you might be like the other T. He thinks you might be bad too. When the soul turns bad, it has a smell to it. Not everyone can smell it, but you can, can't you? You smell it and you feels it in here and in here.
She pointed at my heart and stomach. I had no idea what she was talking about. I looked back at Kai, and she just rolled her eyes. I shrugged my shoulders, and she put all the tarot cards together. She shuffled them twice, and then put them face down. She told me to pick one. I grabbed the one closest to me and turned it over. There was a man with a hat on it. His face was black and featureless, just a silhouette. The crow grabbed the card and looked at it closely.
This card wasn't in my deck until you came. This card doesn't belong here. You don't belong here. You're a stranger in a strange place. You want to go home, but your home is the other T, and you'll never be home again. You're lost and no one's looking for you. If you disappear, no one will look for you, and it knows it. It's deciding if you're bad or not. Are you?
Who the fuck is that? I heard a man yell from the living room. The dogs outside gave very unusual barks, and I could hear them pawing at the door. The crow looked past me and got up quickly. She ran to the front room with her stub of a cigarette still between her fingers. The men were all grabbing shotguns and peering through the curtains.
What'd you see, boy?
The crow asked.
Get my dogs in here right the fuck now.
Someone opened the door, and Pipples ran into the house, knocking over several of the toddlers as they rushed in with their tails between their legs. The trailer was already packed, and now there were 6 more dogs to add to it.
Some guy's out there. He's walking right up to the window. He has on a hat.
The man bolted from his spot and ran to the front door with his shotgun in hand. The crow put her hand over the door.
No one is going outside. That fucking thing won't do you no good, you idiot.
Crow yelled, referring to the gun in his hands.
Everyone sit down and get nice and comfy. Take the children in with Nanny and close the door.
The girls scooped up the little ones and ran to the back of the trailer. They went into the room with the old woman in the wheelchair and slammed the door.
Everyone sit down.
Blue began growling, and all the hair on the dog stood on end. I sat down on the dirty old couch next to Kai and Blue.
You seen him before, girlie? The man with the hat?
I nodded my head yes. Kai gave me a weird look. I felt a fear like I had never felt before, and I had spent most of my young life terrified for one reason or another. This fear was different. It went to my bones. The old crow went to the window and slowly bent down one of the slats to look outside.
I can't see shit out there, but I feels him. It's waiting for you, girlie. It won't dare come in here. Y'all better stay here tonight.
Fuck that, Kai yelled. We are leaving. She grabbed my hand and Blue's collar, and we bolted for the door.
Take this with you, girlie.
The crow took off a necklace she had around her neck. There was a little silver ball on the end of it that had some kind of herb inside. She put it over my head and opened the door for us. Kai grabbed Blue by the collar and ran out the door. I followed behind them while looking around us into the dark for any sign of movement. We got into the car and Blue was barking like crazy. I drove out of there as fast as I could and got back onto Boogertown Road. I drove the dark, winding road mostly in silence. I expected a man with a hat to pop out in front of me with each twist, but he didn't. Finally, Kai broke the silence.
"Say what I mean?"
Kai asked, still breathing hard from our escape.
"She puts on a show, always scares the crap out of everyone. It's a show, Tracy.
I'd never seen her give anything to anyone, though. What the fuck is that thing she gave you? I can smell it from here. I put the ball to my nose. I think it's sage. Well, I think it's all bullshit. What's she talking about? Did 2 T's mean anything to you? I realized that I had to take a chance and trust her. So I told her everything. The horrible truth about my brother and the way he had grown up. I even told her about the man in the hat. I never had a girlfriend to confide in before. I felt like I could trust Kai. Plus, I didn't want to go through any more of this alone. With Kai came backup, too. She had friends all over the place, a loyal dog, and a boyfriend. We stopped back at the tow yard to get my brother's car. I gave her the keys to my Accord, and I followed her back to the hotel. I could see her on the phone in the car in front of me. She was waving her hands around as she talked. I wondered what she must think of me and all this. I'm guessing she was on the phone with Jake. She was probably telling him to keep away from me. Here I was bringing all these problems to them. God knows they didn't need any more problems. I wanted to go to the address on Acorn Branch, but I was afraid to ask anything more of Kai. We got back to the hotel, and there was a large group of people standing in front of it. 2 of them had baseball bats. There were 4 men and 2 women. Kai and Blue got out of my car and approached the group. I parked and turned off my car. I couldn't make out everything, but I saw Jake run down from his apartment to meet up with all of them. I walked up cautiously. "This is Tracy," Kai introduced me to the group. "Tracy, this is Jake's mother. We all call her Mama." "You poor girl." Mama leaned in and hugged me. She had jet black hair and tan skin. One of her eyes was blue and the other was dark brown. Her eyes were big and slightly almond-shaped. Her face was round like a full moon. She had a necklace on that said Salagi. It meant Cherokee and proud. My grandmother was part Cherokee, and she had it on the license plate of her Jeep Cherokee. My grandma was immensely proud of her Cherokee heritage. It was now obvious to me that Jake was Cherokee. Made sense. Gatlinburg is about 30 minutes from Cherokee, North Carolina.
My sister, the Crow, called me and told me about your visit today. She told me that you have an entity that is following you. She called me a week ago and told me that you were coming. She said half a girl is coming, and she's going to need our help. Crow dreamed of you and told me exactly what you would look like. I feel like I knows you. I dreamed of you after she told me about you. I think she's wrong about one thing. I don't believe the entity followed you here, but rather he began following you when you got here. He isn't here because of you. You confuse him, and he isn't sure what to do with you yet. We must keep you safe. These are my brothers and my sister-in-law. We take this very seriously. You're Cherokee, too. We stick together here. We have to look out for our own.
"What makes you think I'm Cherokee?" I asked Mama.
I don't think you're Cherokee. I know you're Cherokee. Not all, but it's in there. We need to leave here. Get your things and meet me back here.
I need to find my brother.
My brother Hunter. She pointed to one of the men standing behind her. He's a cop here in Gatlinburg. He's going to go find out what they know, if anything, about your brother Travis.
How do you know his real name? I asked.
Oh, Kai told me everything you told her. It's important that we know all the facts, Tracy. You don't want to hide things from us. We're trying to help you.
I felt slightly embarrassed, and I felt my cheeks get hot. More than anything, I didn't want to be alone. Kai had told me everything with the Crow was bullshit, and now here we are as if it's something that she said was gospel. I didn't know any of this. As I was standing there listening to her, I saw a cop car pull up. The man must have known Hunter. He walked to the car and was talking with him. I had not seen this cop before. Occasionally Hunter pointed to me. I could see the cop looking past him to get a good look at me. Then he parked and walked over to the group. "Well, hi there, Tracy Thomas," the cop said as he approached me. "I want you to tell me about this man in the hat. We've been getting man with a hat calls all over town. Do you know this guy? Is he your brother?" I don't know him. I have no idea who he is. I saw him my first night here. He was walking down Ski Mountain Road and a cop car almost hit him. Then I had a nightmare about him. Then a man in a hat was trying to get into my room. I could see the outline of his hat through my window, but I have no idea who he is. I've never seen him before coming here. You said you were here on vacation, but that's not true, is it, Tracy? I'm trying to find my brother. He told me he was coming here. Turns out you're not the only one here looking for Travis. Some detectives from LAPD showed up yesterday looking for him, too. As he said this, he looked around at the group as if to let them know also. Well, they say he's being accused of molesting a young boy. An incredibly young boy. A boy. I had wondered about that for so long. No matter what I did, I never could have been everything to him like he was for me. If I found him here, we would have to live on the run. Travis would never again be in our little house on the hill. Travis had been my heroine for so long. Everything I did for him, so I wouldn't have to be alone. Now here I was, surrounded by strangers. I was so mad at myself for letting him do what he did. I tried to keep him close. I tried to keep an eye on him. But apparently I failed. The acorn branch address was still in my pocket. I hadn't told Kai about it, and I was grateful for that. I had been able to keep at least this one clue to myself.
"Go get your things, Tracy," Mama said. "I want you to come home with me so I can keep an eye on you."
I don't mean to seem ungrateful, but I need to find my brother. I began to feel surrounded. I didn't know these people, and I wasn't just going to go off to God knows where with them. Mama didn't seem happy about it at all. They all got into their cars and left. The cop gave me his business card and told me to call him if I saw anything strange. Kai came up to me after they all left.
"I don't blame you. I wouldn't have gone with them either. What now?"
"Well, bed. I'm tired, aren't you?" I really wanted her to leave me alone so I could go check out Acorn Branch. Kai looked down at her watch.
"It's 8:45, crazy."
Wow, is it that early? I guess I'm just emotionally drained.
"Well, I'm going up with Jake. Sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite."
I went to my room and took a shower. I could hear conversations all around me. I could make out Kai's voice, and I put my head to the wall to try and hear it. It was muffled, but I could make out most of it.
"What the fuck is the man in the hat?"
she asked Jake.
"You know my family, they have all these weird bullshit things, fucking witches."
Crow didn't even want us to leave, Jake. What bullshit thing is he supposed to be? Your uncle's buddy said they've been getting reports all over town of a man in a hat. Crow called him an entity. What did your mom say about it?
She called me the second I got in the car alone. She wanted to know everything I knew. Why?
I know you know something.
Okay. Calm the fuck down, Jake responded. "When my mom was little, she used to see a man with a hat. She had an issue with dreams and she was terrified of him. She dreamed of him. The family is all into this bullshit. I don't think it's anything to worry your pretty little head about."
"Stop messing with me. That girl from California is dead set on finding her brother. The Crow said he wasn't on this plane anymore."
"So she thinks he's dead then," Jake responded.
"Is that what she meant? She thinks this dude is dead? I don't know, Kai. I go to work and I come home. That's all I know. These women are crazy and you know it. Right now, I'm not so sure. Feels like there's something going on here. What the fuck? What is it now? I just Googled man in a hat and got like millions of hits. Look at this shit. I picked up my phone and Googled it. Kai was right. This thing had been seen by lots and lots of people, and they were all scared of him. Most saw him while they were sleeping. I looked at countless pictures people had drawn of their man in the hat. They all looked remarkably similar, and no one knew what they were. I found a few pages of people calling it a demon, or the devil himself. One article said it was from the fourth dimension, whatever the fuck that means. I put on some comfy clothes and waited till I couldn't hear anyone talking before I crept out of my room. It was almost 1 a.m. when I left. It was foggy outside, very foggy. I rolled up the window and blasted my new AC. It felt so good. I drove through Gatlinburg, and there was no one on the streets. I put the address into my GPS and sat off for Acorn Branch. The fog lifted as I was driving, and I could see everything much better on this side of town. The roads were covered with cabin rental signs. They had the name of a cabin and the cabin rental company on them. They all had cute names like Bear Crossing or Honeymoon Hideaway. I turned off Hidden Hills, and my GPS lost its signal. The road was very dark. If I shut off my car lights, I wouldn't be able to see anything. Tennessee isn't big on streetlights. I don't think darkness like this exists in Los Angeles. I weaved and weaved around. I finally stumbled across it in accident. Acorn Branch was different. All the homes were set way back. You couldn't see any of the houses from the road. Acorn Branch was a loop. As I was driving, I noticed a person in the road. She was dressed in a pink jogging outfit, and she had a cane. She had on a scarf that was lovely. Her hair was short and blonde. Her hairstyle, clothing, and stride looked like a much older woman than her face did. She looked like a 40-year-old woman wearing her mother's clothes and a wig. I slowed my car down to give her an opportunity to ask for help. Why would anyone want to walk around in an almost pitch-black night after 1 a.m? As I passed her, she looked down at me and gave me a very odd, sideways grin, as if she couldn't turn her neck properly. That's not creepy at all, I said aloud to myself. I found my address, but all I could see was a driveway with the address on the mailbox. I faced my car towards the gate and shut off my headlights. The moon was full, and as the cloud cover moved, I could see a little. My eyes were adjusting to the darkness. The gate was tall, and the driveway was lined with trees. I could barely make out some light coming from behind the trees to where the house was. There was also a ton of security cameras all over the property. Their little red lights blinked in the darkness. I counted 4 just from where I was sitting. I would have no choice but to come back here during the day and knock on the door. I looked up the address on Zillow, and it was a huge house with a 3-car garage, almost 10,000 square feet. It didn't look like a rental. I would have to do some digging to find out who owned it. I was staring up the dark driveway when I saw movement on the road. I sat as still as I could, but someone was walking towards me. I could hear gravel crunching as he walked between the trees down the driveway. He was tall, and as he got closer, I could make out the hat. I sat as still as I possibly could. I could see him, but I didn't think he could see me. I watched as he walked up to the gate and just stood there, staring. I took out my phone and got a picture of him. Maybe the man in the hat lived there. He stopped at the end of the driveway and watched me from the gate. He just stood there. I hit video on my camera and recorded him. He slowly tilted his head from side to side. He could most definitely see me. This made more sense. A creepy dude in a creepy house that stares at people. Who the fuck was this guy? And what, if anything, did he have to do with Travis? I was careful not to take my eyes off him. He put up his hand to the gate and slowly wiggled his fingers. It looked like he was wearing gloves. Then he took the same hand and put it into his pocket. He took something out and threw it through the bars of the gate. It landed on the road in front of him. It was between me and him. I wanted to see what it was, but I was frozen. I pulled my car up to it without taking my eyes off him. I got as close as I could without having to leave the safety of my car. I opened the door and looked down. It was a rolled up piece of paper about the size of a quarter. I reached down and grabbed it. When I came back up, he was gone. I sat the little white ball onto the passenger seat next to me and eyed it as it rolled on the seat as I drove. It was an off-white piece of paper wrapped around something. I stopped at a stoplight and took a better look at it. There was something inside of it, and it felt hard. I drove back to my shithole and looked for the video I had made of him. There he was, waving at me. Motherfucker! I sat in our foggy parking lot and jumped a foot when there was a knock on my window. It was Jake.
Little jumpy there, huh, Tracy? Where you been this time of night?
I looked down at my phone. It was 2:30 a.m. Jake had Blue with him, and he had a leash on her.
We're down here for the last party. I was a little worried when I saw your car missing.
Now, I found an address in my brother's car, and I went to check it out. Jake's phone rang, and he answered it.
Yeah, Tracy just got back, and me and Blue thought we'd escort her to her room. I'm a Southern gentleman, you know, and there is a man wearing a hat on the loose.
Ask Kai to come to my room. I have something to show you guys. I whispered to him, and I got out of the car. I grabbed the paper ball and shoved it into my pocket. Jake and Blue walked with me back to my room, and Kai walked in, just as we did.
Where the fuck you been, girlie?
Kai mocked the crow's nickname for me. When I got into my brother's car, I found a sticky note with an address on it. I went to check it out. While I was there, the fucking creepy man with the hat came to the gate. I got him on video. Look. I opened the video on my phone and let it play.
Did he throw something onto the road? Jake asked. Looks like he's tossing something.
They both looked up at me. I opened my hand and the paper ball was in it. The three of us just stood there staring at it. I sat down on the bed and slowly opened it. The moment I unrolled it, I knew what it was.
Is that a fucking tooth?
Kai screeched. I felt my knees go weak and I fell to the floor. Fuck! I yelled as loud as I could. Motherfucker, no! Oh my God, Travis! I cried about as hard as I have ever had for an exceedingly long time. Snot was dripping from my nose, and Kai grabbed half the roll of toilet paper for me. She handed me a bunched up glob, and I blew my nose in it. It's my brother's front tooth. He chipped it when we were little. I unrolled the tooth completely, and the paper had writing on it, and it said, "Invitation accepted," in the same runny ink as before.
What invitation?
Kai asked. I told them both about my first night in Gatlinburg and how I had seen the man walking down the road. I had no idea what any of it meant, but I had no idea this motherfucker had something to do with my brother. Maybe he lives at Acorn Branch. Maybe he isn't an entity at all. Maybe he's just some fucked up vigilante. It was time to go to the police. As much as I hated to do it, I knew I needed help. Travis might still be there. I needed to be sure he wasn't being tortured. I think we should call the police, I said softly. Jake responded,
Well, I'll call my uncle and get him over there. We don't need all of Gatlinburg PD to tell LAPD any of this. If we can find him first, you guys might have half a chance of getting out of here without him being arrested.
Maybe he should be arrested. I've spent my whole life trying to keep him out of trouble, Travis. If he's in jail, I could go visit him. I could send him things. Now, a few days ago, prison was my biggest fear. It didn't seem so bad anymore. All I wanted now was for him alive. I couldn't go on never knowing. I can't and won't go home without him. Jake called his uncle, and a squad car pulled up a few minutes later. Hunter knocked at the door, and Kai let him in. I sat there crying as quietly as I could. Hunter pulled up a chair and sat across from me. He asked me for the tooth.
Only if you swear you'll give it right back. It might be all I have left.
You understand how important this is, that we know if it's your brother's or not.
I'm telling you, it's his. 100%.
Now, how could you possibly know this is your brother's tooth? This could be from an animal or...
It's his. Trust me. I remember the night it happened. I woke up and he wasn't with me. We were about 10 at the time. He came back into our room, sniveling and crying. In the morning, his tooth was chipped. This tooth.
I wanted to tell the rest of the story, but I couldn't. Travis had told me to lock it, and I did. I had never told anyone about how he really chipped that tooth. The words lock it still had power over me. I had never told any of his secrets, and he never told any of mine that I know of. I had told them how sick he was, but they didn't know any of the stories that had created the pedophile he grew into. To say we were molested wasn't enough. They only know the pedophile, but they didn't understand the boy that was a victim.
He played with it all the time. He ran his tongue over it when he was nervous. He slurped food through it. He could shoot water through it. I hated the sounds he made with it. I heard the scraping all the time. I know this tooth is his.
Not only was I holding his tooth, but I was holding the root of the tooth. Someone or something had pulled it out of his mouth. I showed Hunter the video.
I know that address on Acorn. An old man lives there. Very wealthy. Now I'm a little concerned for his safety, too. This is most definitely not the little old man that lives there, I'll tell you that. It's almost 4 a.m. I'm going to need all y'all to stay here, except for you.
Hunter pointed to Blue. Hunter took Blue and went to investigate the Acorn Branch property. We sat by the phone until we all fell asleep. I woke up in my bed in Los Angeles. It wasn't the way I had left it, but rather it looked like it did when Travis and I were young. I felt my mother's hands reach under my body like she had done so many times before. She lifted me, and I heard Travis start to cry.
Please don't take her, Mama. Please don't let them hurt her, Mama. Please, I need her. Stop, please. I need to sleep. I can't sleep without her. Please.
I can't remember which one made him cry more. He cried and begged when they took me, and he cried and he begged when they took him. I cried, but I never begged. Most of the time I pretended to be asleep. I remember my mother leaving me there, alone on a bed. This dream was an exact replica of the first time the mole man molested me. I had tried to remember his face, but I couldn't. In this dream, his face was crystal clear. When he was on top of me, I could see the mole on his neck. It had 3 rather large hairs jutting out of it, and only one was curly. He always smelled bad, and he was always rough with me. In my dream, he was inside me, and I was staring at his mole. He slammed his body into my tiny frame, and in the corner, I saw the brim of a hat. The hat flowed across the room. I saw the shimmer of his blue eyes just behind my mole man. The man in the hat shoved a gloved hand through the man's body, and I saw his still beating heart sitting in his glove right in front of my face. I woke up with a jolt on the floor and looked at the clock. It was almost 10 a.m. I woke Jake and Kai, who had somehow made their way to my bed. I folded his tooth back into the ball and put it into the ball the crow had given me. It made me feel like he was with me. I squished it and the paper it was wrapped in into the herbs that were inside and locked in the clasp the crow had given me.